crypto is finally starting to look like it might be beginning to move again, which of course is really, really good to see. Very good news overall, but I just want to make sure that we're not getting too carried away. We still are in a market that is looking a little bit tenuous, so I want to talk a little bit more about that today in detail and just make sure that, we're understanding kind of the position that the market's in, and even especially when we're in very kind of like uneventful and boring types of places like we are right now. Just seeing a little bit of action, we want to make sure that we don't get too carried away. So, I want to talk a little bit about that today. Obviously, we are going to go over just kind of a general update of what's going on in the market today, why things might be moving, and also how to make sure that you don't get wrecked. Because, of course, in this type of market, it is very easy, particularly when there are some of these potentially kind of fabricated bumps, just to try and get people excited, get people trading, when there's really not anything fundamentally to trade on right now. So let's talk about that. So starting off, we'll actually take a look at the market overview that we can see here in CoinGlass. CoinGlass is really nice because I've actually put this dashboard together so we can kind of get bits and pieces through these 4 different charts here of kind of a general sense of what the market is doing. We'll start here with the crypto fear and greed index. We can see we have actually moved back into neutral. I think this might be the first time in quite a while, actually. It looks like this is actually the second day in neutral within the past week. And then if we look at in the past month, there's only been 6 days in neutral. 20% of the time we've been in neutral, 60% of the time in fear, and 20% of the time in extreme fear. So definitely a very fear-based market over the past month. I think this makes sense, right? Obviously, the market has been pretty bad. So we are, that's essentially kind of the market we've been dealing with and the market we've been trading and a lot of that type of stuff. As we've been able to see, prices have really taken a pretty strong hit. If we look here at the open interest and volume, again, this is on Bitcoin specifically, open interest has come back substantially. We can also see that volume has kind of been trending down over the past, what would this be, like month or so? Yeah, actually like 3 months is kind of what we've seen this kind of trend down on. Also, we kind of saw things kind of like level out here for open interest, and then we saw things kind of climb back a decent chunk. It does look like open interest is starting to spike again. This could be a good indicator, right? This could mean that we're starting to see a little bit of a pump. How long this pump is sustained, we don't know for sure. Very, very hard to say with certainty. But we can also see the liquidation map. Now, this is something that we do always need to be careful of because we've talked about this in the past, right? Usually when we see a large move like this, if we look to the 1 day and the 7 day, we can see the liquidations are now kind of on the side of actually moving back to the downside and liquidating longs because a lot of shorts have been liquidated. If we actually go back and we take a quick look at the liquidation heat map, we can see over the past 24 hours, $184 million liquidated, 51 of that being longs, 133 of that being shorts. And again, this is throughout the entire market. Not necessarily a huge number. Obviously, we've seen some, vastly greater days where we've seen, $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion liquidations. And so that's kind of one thing that we're kind of taking a look at here. But overall, as we can see, it's primarily shorts. Still not too much action going on, though. We can see that this market, if it is getting started to get heated up, it's only just barely getting started. So, that's kind of what we're seeing here, kind of with the overall crypto map and the crypto update. Now, the last thing I want to take just a super quick look at here is the RSI heat map. We can see that things kind of starting to move up generally on the 24-hour, things looking back into neutral. If we look at the 4-hour, things are actually getting very close to strong. We are seeing a lot of strength very, very recently. If we look at the 1 week, we can see the overall market still in weak, which I do think makes a lot of sense, but we are moving up. Things are starting to potentially improve a little bit. We can see this here with the fear and greed index. We can see this with the price action, with the volume, all this type of stuff starting to kind of come back a little bit. And then also if we look at the crypto bubbles, we can see overall very, very green day in the market. Only a handful here and there that are actually down on the day. If we look at the week, we can see something very similar. Lots of green everywhere, which is very nice for a change, because if we do look at the month, things still very, very red, even with these kind of minor pumps that we have seen. So we do have kind of a ways to go if we are going to see any meaningful gains coming back into the market. However, something very important did just happen with Bitcoin, which I wanted to call out here. Again, this is the daily candle. So usually when things start to show on the daily, it means it's like a pretty good technical indicator, just because the daily is a much larger time frame, and so it's got a lot more kind of weight to it, and history and price action, all that type of stuff. What we can see is we've been sitting in a potentially, depending on how you want to look at it, anywhere from like a probably 2 month to like probably 6 week to 2 month time frame here where we've been on kind of this descending trend line for Bitcoin. This is actually the first time that we've actually broken above this. Now again, we saw a little bit of a wick here. Maybe this wicks right back down and we get rejected and kind of continue to move lower. Very, very possible. It's hard to say for certain at this point, but it does look like we may be breaking over this trend line, which could indicate a trend change for Bitcoin. This obviously would be a very, very good thing for us. This would indicate a potential more sustained move back to the upside. I think kind of the first thing that we would need to see is obviously we need to take out this recent high. And then from there, we need to take out kind of this recent high that we saw kind of back in the beginning of March, where we saw that really, really strong move up and then that really, really strong move down. So we kind of need to take that back out and hopefully stay above that again. When all this happens and kind of how quickly a lot of this type of stuff, we don't know for sure. We can see on the RSI, things looking pretty stable here. And then obviously on the Bollinger Bands, kind of about the 75th percentile in terms of kind of price to where like the Bollinger Band spread is. But this overall is looking like a pretty healthy chart. The next thing from like a resistance level is we're going to probably be running into a little bit of resistance here at this 91,000. So I guess I should amend my previous statement to, we have to take this one out first, then we have to go to 91,000. And then after that, we're going to be looking kind of this 94, 95,000 range. I do still have this trade open from way, way back before we kind of broke down back in here. This would have been kind of the end of February. Again, this is a low leverage trade, which is why I take low leverage trades. I can sit on this for quite some time, and so I'm not particularly worried about it getting liquidated. I'm very confident in the fact that we will see Bitcoin come back at some point. When, who knows? I have been kind of DCAing as things come down a little bit to kind of bring this price slightly lower, but mostly I just haven't really touched it. I just kind of left it as is. We can see though, if we actually go back to other trading pairs, our SUI position is now up. Jasmine obviously still down a decent chunk, and then Ondo getting very, very close to coming back into profit. So we'll be tracking these over time. Obviously the market hasn't done particularly well recently, but we are starting to see a little bit of life coming back into a lot of these different positions here. So we'll kind of track that, see how that goes. If you are interested in doing any sort of trading, spot trading, leverage trading, anything like that, just feel free to use my link in the description below. You do get a 10% bonus on first time deposits if you use a link in the description below for BTCC. Really, really great platform. Obviously, the bonus here is fantastic. Extra bonuses up to $10,055 as well, if you are interested in that, as well as no VPN or KYC necessary. I also do have links with WEEX and Phemex as well. Phemex has a really, really great trading bot, and then WEEX I find really nice to use as well. And also they have a very substantial new user bonus in addition to. A lot of that is kind of trading based and a lot of that type of stuff. But overall, it's a really great platform as well. You can see here, I do have a couple of positions open on WEEX as well. My Doge long doing quite well. And then I'm taking a little bit of a contrarian play here with Fartcoin. I think we've kind of seen a pretty strong move to the upside here. If this kind of alt market continues to take off, this may be a bad play. But again, I'm playing with a very, very small amount and also watching my stop loss very, very closely. So maybe not recommended. This is definitely a very, very high risk trade. So maybe not recommended for everybody, but it is something that I'll just kind of see how it plays out and kind of go from there. So anyway, moving along, basically what I want to talk about today with kind of what we're seeing in the market. Obviously things looking nice. We're seeing kind of potentially a trend reversal from Bitcoin. We're seeing a little bit more optimism coming into the wider crypto market. RSIs are moving up. Volume is starting to potentially maybe come a little bit back. There's a little bit more kind of bullish sentiment within the wider market. Things look good, right? I mean, if we come here and look at X, we can see basically just bull posting everywhere. This is something that happens very, very frequently. And so this is something that I also just kind of want to highlight as well. It's hopefully, and this is one of the things of kind of how I'm trying to base my theory of what's going on. And part of what I'm seeing here, especially when we start to see Twitter turn bullish, is, I mean, if it's not completely obvious to you already, most of the people on X are like leaves in the wind. When price goes up, they're bullish. When price goes down, they're bearish. It's kind of ridiculous, but that's just how it is. And so hopefully when you see kind of what's going on and you see the vibe shift and the trend change, all that type of stuff on X, you're taking note of it, not from a sense of like, oh my gosh, I should get in now, but more of like a interesting, this has started to kind of move a little bit, maybe a little bit more, if these people are starting to feel bullish, maybe we're at a point where we should be looking to take profits, because again, we don't ever know. And when the sentiment changes, that's usually when we see kind of potentially a top or an overextension. So just something to think about. Obviously, very, very not an academic approach. I've just noticed it in the past when we start to see kind of the vibes shift on crypto Twitter. It doesn't actually mean anything particularly positive. It just means that now people are excited because price has gone up, and we actually need to look more towards like the fundamentals and the economic environment that we're still in. And if you look at the economic environment that we're still in, we talked a little bit about this on the live stream that I did over the weekend, but nothing's really changed. And from a very short-term perspective, things look kind of bearish, kind of from what we're seeing in the macro environment. Obviously, there's potential possible like recessionary factors coming in. There's potential possible like issues with like again, this is all short term liquidity. There's issues with like potentially some debt issues. We might be seeing asset prices taking hits just because of some of these recessionary and deflationary things that are being introduced as kind of some of the new administration's things that they're trying to do. A lot of this type of stuff can potentially, again, negatively impact price or asset prices. And of course, crypto is like the highest beta asset that there is, right? So if the stock market's going to go down 10%, crypto is probably going down 20, 30, 40%. And that's just kind of the reality of how things are looking, at least currently. So it's very important to kind of keep note that just because we're starting to see, a little bit of like short-term action does not mean that we're going to go up only and alt season is back and all of this type of stuff, just like people on crypto Twitter might be insinuating because we've seen, a green candle or two. This is usually what happens when the market kind of gets boring and there's not really too much going on. People are kind of really just grasping for straws and looking for anything. It could be more cope than anything else. And so you just, as an investor, need to be very, very aware of that and make sure that you're not getting sucked into that, because usually most of the like top investors and traders in crypto have probably already kind of established the positions in the high conviction cryptos that they wanted to buy into on the dip. Maybe they DCA'd into it a little bit. I think there's a very, very high chance that we continue to go lower, and potentially, maybe some are saving some dry powder for then. Maybe some are potentially saving some of their dry powder just to confirm a trend reversal, right? There's a couple people that I've talked to that aren't really going to jump into anything, even though we have seen some low prices compared to what we saw 2-3 months ago. They're still not looking to jump in quite yet, just because we haven't really seen that confirmation of trend reversal. So obviously they're not going to be nailing like the absolute Pico bottom, but also we could potentially continue to go further down from here. The macroeconomic situation has not really changed. Only the price action over the past day and a half has, right? So you just have to keep that in mind and just make sure that you're not getting kind of whipped up into some, false reality just because we've seen a green candle or two. Establish your conviction in high conviction projects that you have and go in and stick with that. Price changing one direction or the other a little bit too much, in over a handful of days shouldn't really, it shouldn't really play a super large part in your investment strategy, because you're convicted in your project, right? Short-term price action should really kind of be irrelevant in my opinion. And so that's kind of how I'm going about this market. A lot of the buying that I did, again, I still have plenty of dry powder left over just because I do think it's highly possible that we continue to go lower. But a lot of what I've done here is I've essentially just been buying things that I like, buying things that I have high conviction in, and anything that I don't, I'm not buying, right? I'm not really touching it at all. And then I'm just keeping some dry powder for the possibility that we continue to go lower. This could have been the bottom. I don't know. But just given what we're seeing kind of in the macro situation, I think short term, it would not at all surprise me if we continue to go a little bit lower. But then long term, as I maintain, very, 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 very bullish. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. I'm super kind of optimistic with the fact that we continue to see very, very long-term bullish momentum just with all the things that we're seeing out of the new administration and the government trying to be very, very pro-crypto. So I do think long-term we're in a really good position. We just have to get through some of the short-term bumps that I think might arise. So we'll have to just kind of see how that goes. Now, if you're interested in getting some of my thoughts a little bit more like kind of real time as things happen. Of course, I try to make my videos as quickly as possible, but I can't always, go through and do a full production length video and make sure that it gets out, immediately after things happen. So I do actually have a Discord community group. If you guys are interested in kind of joining in and getting some of my, some of my thoughts, asking questions, meeting other people who are interested in crypto and trying to learn as well. I think there's great value in having community and things like that. I do have a Patreon account. That link is also in the description below. If you are interested, it's very, very minimal amount. It's mainly just there to keep bots out primarily. Mostly what this is for is just, kind of have a place to hang out, ask me questions, interact with me a little bit more personally if you are interested. Totally up to you. Obviously, no pressure at all. I do read and respond to all the comments as well. So hopefully you did find the information in this video useful. If you did, a like and a subscribe really, really does help. As I mentioned, just barely, I do read and respond to all of my comments. So if you have anything you want me to see or, interact with or anything like that, just go ahead and do that. And thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.